August 14th, 2005. A Boeing 737 takes off from Cyprus with 121 souls on board. It climbs into the blue summer sky, but within minutes, something is terribly wrong. The crew stops responding. Radio calls go unanswered. Yet the aircraft keeps flying, locked on autopilot, cruising steadily toward Athens. For the next 2 hours, the world watches a plane continue its journey, while everyone on board lies unconscious. This is the chilling story of Europe's first modern ghost flight. Helios Airways was a small, budget airline based in Cyprus. Founded in the late 1990s, it was known for cheap tickets and rapid growth. But behind the success were troubling signs: repeated mechanical issues, frustrated crews, and complaints about maintenance shortcuts. Flight 522 that morning was routine. A Boeing 737-300, an aircraft type flown safely around the world. On the flight deck, Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten, a 58-year-old German with over 16,000 hours of experience. At his side, First Officer Pampos Charalambous, 51 years old, a Cypriot pilot with more than 7,000 hours. Both men were veterans of the skies. The 6 crew included flight attendants from Cyprus and Greece. Among them was 25-year-old Andreas Prodromou, an off-duty flight attendant hitching a ride home, seated in the cabin. He also happened to hold a UK commercial pilot's license, a detail that would later become crucial. On board were 115 passengers, families, tourists, workers heading to Europe. Many were bound for Prague after a short stop in Athens. At 9:07 a.m., Flight 522 departed Larnaca. As the aircraft climbed past 12,000 feet, a warning horn suddenly sounded in the cockpit. It was the pressurization alert. The system that regulates cabin pressure had been left on the wrong setting after maintenance. Instead of being switched to auto, it was still set to manual. The crew misread the signal. Believing it was an air conditioning problem, they radioed an engineer on the ground. The engineer asked them to check fuses. Confusion reigned. Vital minutes passed. The aircraft continued climbing. Inside the cabin, passengers began to feel the effects of hypoxia. The brain deprived of oxygen brings dizziness, confusion, then unconsciousness. Some managed to put on masks, others never had the chance. At 18,000 feet, the masks automatically deployed. Yellow cones dropped from overhead. But hypoxia is swift and merciless. Within minutes, almost everyone on board was unconscious. Even the pilots slumped forward, unresponsive. Despite the silence inside, the autopilot kept flying. Flight 522 continued along its programmed route, crossing into Greek airspace, climbing to 34,000 feet. Air traffic controllers in Athens tried repeatedly to contact the crew. "Helios 522, do you read?" Only silence. Again and again, their calls went unanswered. For controllers, the situation was unnerving. A passenger jet flying perfectly, but with no one speaking back. By 10:20 a.m., with still no response, the Greek Air Force was ordered to intervene. 2 F-16 fighter jets roared into the sky. Their mission: intercept the silent Boeing. The fighter pilots pulled alongside the 737 as it approached Athens. What they saw was unforgettable. The cockpit windows revealed the captain, slumped motionless over the controls. His oxygen mask dangled above him, unused. The first officer was collapsed in his seat. In the cabin, passengers sat eerily still, strapped in, heads tilted to one side. It was as though time had stopped. The F-16 pilots radioed their findings. "The pilots are incapacitated. The passengers are not moving." Then came the shock. Movement in the cockpit. A man entered and sat down in the captain's seat. It was Andreas Prodromou, the off-duty flight attendant with pilot training. Against all odds, he had stayed conscious long enough to act. Fighter pilots watched as he tried desperately to regain command of the aircraft. But it was too late. The 737 had been flying for nearly 2 hours. Its fuel reserves were dwindling. At 11:54 a.m., the left engine flamed out. Smoke trailed as it shut down. 10 minutes later, the right engine failed. The aircraft began its final descent. From the fighters' cockpits, the scene was surreal. A powerless jetliner gliding silently, nose dipping toward the mountains of Attica. At 12:04 p.m., Helios Airways Flight 522 slammed into a hillside near the village of Grammatico, just 40 kilometers north of Athens. Witnesses on the ground reported the deafening roar as the jet tore into the earth, breaking apart, flames rising into the summer air. Every one of the 121 people on board was killed. The aftermath was devastating. Rescue teams searched through wreckage scattered across dry fields and olive groves. Families gathered in Cyprus and Greece, waiting for news, only to learn there were no survivors. Investigators soon uncovered the chain of failures. Maintenance crews had left the pressurization switch in manual. The pilots had overlooked it during pre-flight checks. When the warning horn sounded, they misidentified it, thinking it was a simple cooling system issue. The final report concluded: human error, compounded by poor training and a culture of negligence at Helios Airways. The fallout was swift. Helios Airways was fined heavily, ordered to pay compensation, and within a year, its operating license was revoked. The company disappeared from the skies it once filled with low-cost flights. But the tragedy left deeper scars. Cyprus declared 3 days of mourning. Families buried children, parents, and loved ones lost in what became the deadliest air disaster in Cypriot history, and the worst accident in Greek aviation. For many, the haunting image remains that of Andreas Prodromou, the lone figure who tried to save 121 lives, battling against impossible odds in a cockpit filled with silence. The questions linger. If he had reached the controls sooner, could he have saved the flight? Could ground controllers or the military have intervened differently? The truth is harsher. By the time Flight 522 leveled at 34,000 feet, nearly everyone on board was already unconscious. The Boeing was flying itself, an empty shell drifting above Europe. For 2 hours, the skies held a machine with no living crew, its passengers lost long before the final crash.